Posed by Iran. And Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, in Donald Trump's own words, in the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's own words, the United States is at war with Iran. The question is, did Congress authorize the war as the Constitution requires? Did the President present anything before Congress? Did the Congress have any debate? Did any administrative authority come before the House Foreign Affairs Committee to testify? The answer to that is no. The question is, was there any imminent threat requiring the use of force? The administration has not presented one. In fact, the word imminent does not appear even once in the administration's own War Powers notification. Can't find the word imminent. Did the Trump administration even bother making the case to the American people or to Congress? Just 8 days ago, during the State of the Union, the most visible platform as our president has, he could have laid out the rationale for military action as other presidents have. Instead, Iran was just a footnote in a record long speech. This is a war of choice that was launched by this administration without authorization, without clearly stating objectives or a defined endgame, and without explaining how they intend to keep Americans safe. The chaos unleashed will not be born by the president's family. It will be born by our men and women in uniform who will face retaliation from Iran and its proxy networks. It will be born by innocent civilians at heightened risk of attacks from Iran's aligned terrorist cells. It will be born by American families paying more for groceries, for electricity, for gasoline, all for Donald Trump's war of choice. Americans woke up on Saturday to the news that the United States is again at war in the Middle East. They don't know for how long, because the president has not articulated a clearly defined endgame. Military action without a defined strategy invites escalation, mission creep, and failure. We should have learned this lesson already. Why? We should have learned it, or where? From Iraq, from Afghanistan, and Vietnam. As Benjamin Franklin once said, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This War Powers resolution is simple. This is not a vote on the authorization for use of military force. This simply demands that the President of the United States come to Congress, as our Constitution demands, to seek authorization for what he himself has described as a war. Just abide by the Constitution. We all bring our hands up and swear when we're sworn and say, we will abide by the Constitution. You would think that the President of the United States would do just that. This War Powers resolution does not prevent the United States from defending itself. It does not stop the president from responding to an imminent attack. It does not limit us from protecting our troops. You know, I've served in Congress for 28 years. And I've been in this chamber as this body has done its most sacred and serious work, deliberating whether to send our American service members into harm's way. It's a difficult vote. It's a serious vote. Without question, the hardest vote that I've ever had to take. But that's my responsibility. I took a pledge to the Constitution that I would follow it. You know, I was here for the vote after 9/11 to go into Afghanistan. A heavy decision. The president brought information in. We had dialogue, we had conversation, we had debate. We did something else. In the House Foreign Affairs Committee, we had hearings. We had administration officials come in. I wasn't even the ranking member or the chair or anything else. I was just a member of the committee. I could call the administration and say, I need to speak to a deputy secretary or the secretary. And they would come into my office and we would have this dialogue to determine whether or not we were going to go into this war. Has that happened now? For over a year. For all the times. Not once have we had a hearing in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We've asked to have individuals that were negotiating. Unfortunately, some of them are not employed by the State Department, et cetera, like Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff, who all are friends of the president's, basically real estate negotiators, who they were just a half an hour in Geneva flipping back and forth from two major negotiations. And if it was serious, I wouldn't have been in the White House when the president was supposed to have been honoring individuals after we had lost the lives of 6 service members, talking about curtains and how I redecorated the White House. This is too serious a decision for me. I would hope for the President of the United States also. So, getting the facts, in Iraq, the Secretary of State came before and testified, went before the UN, talked to the American people. Now, I disagreed because I didn't see the connections after I got the information on Iraq, so I voted no. I agreed on Afghanistan, but the point here is the president obeyed the Constitution because he came to Congress first and allowed the members of Congress to make a determination. What has to stop, because what has happened year after year in my time here, I have watched Congress gradually relinquish its authority on matters of war to the executive branch. We've allowed overly broad authorizations for the use of military force to remain on the books. We have permitted presidents of both parties to commit forces without a vote. This war with Iran is the most extreme example of that abdication. The framers rejected the idea of a king, meaning one person making a decision without consultation, without giving any reason to this body, absolutely reject it. We're not under an authoritarian government, like Russia, for example, where Vladimir Putin, he can go to war. He doesn't have to worry about the Duma. They're not a body that has the responsibility that we have in this Congress. So he can go on and fight a war that he's created without worrying about being or having to talk and being accountable to anyone. Our founding fathers did not want that. They didn't want a king. That's why we were created as a body. And it's long past time for us to reclaim and stand up for that authority. For I tell you, even though he may want us to think he is, Donald Trump is not a king. And if he believes the war with Iran is in our national interest, then he must come to Congress and make the case. Show the facts. Show what the intelligence says. Come to Congress and allow us to ask the questions. We've had 3 scenarios. The so-called Gang of 8 met once. Then they got another phone call right beforehand. Then the so-called Gang of 20 met once. That's all we've heard from the president. So I oppose this war of choice. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? Each member here must make clear with their own vote where they stand on that decision. The president has initiated hostilities without a clear mission, and without a coherent strategy, and without a defined end game. And some members of Congress may decide after they see everything, we may not see it together in the same way. But the evidence and the case comes here, and then we take a vote. And as was the occasion for me back in 2003, I voted one way, the majority voted another way. President had the authority. Another time, I voted the way the majority voted. But each time they came to us. And that's what this debate is about. And that's what we need to do. Now, Mike, as I see this, the president has initiated hostilities without a clear mission, without a coherent strategy, and without a defined end game. So this is an open-ended, undefined military engagement is precisely what the War Powers Resolution was designed to restrain. We are not the Iranian parliament. We are not a rubber stamp Congress, or at least we shouldn't be a rubber stamp Congress. But in this scenario, we see whatever this president wants, my colleagues on the other side will just rubber stamp it. We should be a co-equal branch of government. And our duty is not optional. It was written in the Constitution. The framers gave Congress this authority because they believed no single person should have the power to take this nation to war alone. So today, we either defend the principle or we surrender it. I choose to defend the Constitution and defend the principle and do my job that I put my hand up and swore I would. Hard votes, easy votes, I'll take them all because that's what I swore an oath to do. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
My colleague talked about choices. Defending yourself is a choice. It's a choice that not everybody makes. Some people, instead of defending themselves, curl up into a corner and cry and turn their eyes. Some people stand up and they step into the fight and they make the tough choice of going through the battles that it takes to defend yourself. I will thank again President Trump for defending America from an imminent threat that no other president has had the guts to stand up to. What is that imminent threat? What was that imminent threat? That President Trump is doing his duty, his constitutional duty, his Article 2 authority to defend America against. I will tell you, it is something that almost every single member of Congress has literally agreed upon up until President Trump decided to defend America. Previously, almost every member of Congress voted to call Iran the largest state sponsor of terror. And tomorrow we will cast a vote on what was just debated about reaffirming that they are the largest state sponsor of terror. Nearly all members unanimously voted to condemn their continuous funding of terrorist proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah. What does that mean? It means they give them money, they give them weapons, they give them training, they give them direction on where to find and how to kill Americans, and then they reward them for doing that. Almost every member of Congress has voted unanimously to condemn that. It was almost a unanimous vote calling their nuclear program a massive threat to the United States of America. My colleague over there voted in the affirmative on that. Almost every one of us voted to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Those votes, they didn't just happen for no reason. We have seen Iran as an imminent threat against America, not just for the last 4 days, not just for the last 4 months or 4 years, but for the last 40 years. Why do they continue to be an imminent threat? Because they have never faced an imminent response until President Trump. Instead, we told them, when I say we, I could say America, but really it was my Democrat colleagues that told them this, told them how much uranium they could enrich instead of they can't do it, period. We told them when they could have a nuclear weapon instead of no. And on top of that, again, I say we because it's the America, but it was really my Democrat colleagues, gave them pallets of cash. That's a fact. Me especially, many of my other colleagues, I wouldn't take this away from anybody here. No one wants to see our military go into combat or war or conduct combat operations or battle or whatever word somebody wants to use to describe it. I do not want to see conflicts end in casualties. I wear many names on my wrist of friends that I have lost. But Iran's terror, which has caused the death of thousands of Americans, it has to stop. They don't warn us when they're going to kill our Americans. They are an imminent threat. They look for a surprise. They look for an opportunity, any weakness, any moment that they can go out there and attack us. They are an imminent threat. There has proven no other way to stop this imminent threat. Not by negotiation, not by accord, not by summit. So let's talk about this imminent threat. 3 U.S. soldiers killed at Tower 22 a year and a half ago. Sergeant Sanders, Sergeant Moffett, Sergeant Rivers. Imminent threat. Countless civilian vessels targeted by Iranian drones. That is what an imminent threat looks like. This one just pisses me off beyond belief. 10 U.S. Navy sailors captured and held on their knees at gunpoint by the Iranian Navy. Imminent threat. The October 7 attack, killing 1,200 civilians, including 46 Americans, supported by Iran. Again, that is an imminent threat. Very personal to me. Iran's killing of an estimated 1 in 6 American service members in Iraq between 2003 and 2011. Imminent threat. Beyond that, U.S. fighter jets lost, sunk off one of our carriers in the Red Sea because of Houthi attacks. That is an imminent threat. If you ask an American whether they want war or combat, you can ask me that question. I would say no. I don't want it. I've been in it. I don't want it for my children. But we do want President to stop Iran's imminent threats. If I said, do you want combat? Anybody with sense would say no. What do you want us to do if there's 10 American Navy men and women put on their knees at gunpoint by Iran? We want you to take care of that. Do you want us to go into combat? No. What do you want us to do if there's 3 American service members killed at Tower 22 by that imminent threat? We want you to take care of that. This is what taking care of that looks like. President Trump has been clear, consistent, and transparent. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And he made every effort to address this through diplomatic means. Let me quote directly from a resolution that Democrats overwhelmingly supported, including my colleagues. The House of Representatives declares it is the policy of the United States to use all means necessary to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Leader Jeffries voted on it. Ranking Member Meeks voted on it. Speaker Emeritus Pelosi voted on it. Did they not believe it when they voted on it? Did they not read it? Did they not understand? Use all means necessary to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. We all know Iran poses an imminent threat to the United States. The only difference now is that President Trump is sitting in office. Right now, our military is shooting down Iranian missiles and drones that are targeting Americans in the region. If Democrats had their way and this resolution passed, they would force United States military to pack up. Stop shooting down missiles. Tell every American sheltering in place, every ally fighting against this regime, that America is no longer there to help. And while this does not fit the narrative of my Democrat colleagues, President Trump had the authority to do so under Article 2 of the Constitution and the War Powers Resolution Act to get the job done. And he has been transparent with this Congress. Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Director of the CIA Radcliffe, all conducting now 3 specific briefs, making our objective clear. Destroy every single piece of Iranian military hardware that can reach out and touch Americans or has been used to reach out and touch Americans. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All I say, Mr. Speaker, is that if Iran has been an imminent threat for 47 years, the word imminent then loses all meaning. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York, the Democratic leader in the United States House of Representatives, from Brooklyn, New York, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
The minority leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my good friend, the distinguished gentleman from Queens, the great state of New York, the once and future chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Meeks, for his leadership and for yielding. I rise today in strong support of the American people, in support of our men and women in uniform, in support of the United States Constitution, and in support of this War Powers Resolution. As we gather here today on the floor of the House of Representatives, there are mothers and fathers across this country who are in mourning, confronting the heartbreaking loss of their loved ones in uniform. My prayers are with the families of the 6 American service members who have been killed overseas in Donald Trump's war of choice. We're thankful for their heroism, their bravery, and their patriotism, and may their memories always be a blessing. Mr. Speaker, every member who serves in this chamber has sworn an oath of office. It seems as though many of my Republican colleagues have forgotten that. So let me remind you in part as to what it says. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help me God. In this remarkable country, the greatest nation in the history of the world, we don't swear an oath to a king, to a political party, or to a man bent on desecrating the Oval Office. In the Congress, in the courts, and in the military, we swear an oath to the United States Constitution. Mr. Speaker, when the framers drafted that glorious document, they feared the rise of a monarch, a demagogue, a tyrant. Today we are here on the House floor because the Constitution, the binding document that makes us all Americans, is being trampled on by a wannabe king. As members of the House of Representatives, the branch of government who the framers decided would be the closest to the American people, to reflect the hopes, the dreams, the aspirations, the fears, the concerns, the anxieties, the life experiences, and the passions of the American people. We have a solemn obligation, Democrats and Republicans alike. We are all guardians of the American people and of the Constitution. We swore an oath that compels us to ensure that this president's modern-day injuries and abuses come to an end. We're at war now in the Middle East, spending billions of dollars to bomb Iran, when Republicans refuse to find a dime to make health care affordable for the American people, to make sure that everyday Americans can go see a doctor when they need one. This war has not been authorized by the people's representatives here in this glorious House. Article 1 of the Constitution explicitly provides Congress with the sole authority to declare war. There is nothing ambiguous about that. The framers made that decision because they were concerned about kings who throughout time plunged their people into unnecessary wars, impoverishing them or imperiling their lives by sending them off to a foreign conflict, often to pillage the resources of others for the benefit of a tyrant and his family. Sound familiar? That's why the power to declare war was given explicitly to the House and to the Senate, given to the people's representatives. Abraham Lincoln, as a member of this House in 1848, once profoundly observed the provision of the Constitution giving the war-making power to Congress was dictated, as I understand it, by the following reasons. Kings had always been involving and impoverishing their people in wars, pretending generally, if not always, that the good of the people was the object. This our convention understood to be the most oppressive of all kingly oppressions. And they resolved to so frame the Constitution that no one man should hold the power of bringing this oppression upon us. Then Congressman Abraham Lincoln, Republican Congressman, 1848. That is why we have advanced this War Powers resolution today. Donald Trump intentionally refused to get authorization from Congress for this war of choice, a war that has now exploded to more than 10 countries across the Middle East. The President has not even, Mr. Speaker, bothered to offer a coherent answer to the most basic questions that any commander-in-chief should address when making the solemn decision to take us to war. Why are we doing this? What are our objectives? How will this all end? Mr. Speaker, if this military action, this war, is so principled, why is the President unwilling or unable to make his case directly to the American people? If the tremendous cost to American taxpayers in terms of sacred human lives and our nation's precious resources is so justified, why does the President's rationale, why does the administration's rationale change every single day? Now, make no mistake, Iran is a bad actor. They must be confronted for their nuclear aspirations, painful human rights abuses, and repression of its own people, including the slaughter of thousands of civilians during the recent protests. It is the leading state sponsor of terrorism. It is a brutal regime that presents a serious threat to our allies in the Middle East, including Israel, Jordan, and the Gulf states. But the President has a responsibility to justify plunging America into another war that will cost more American lives and billions, if not trillions, in taxpayer resources. That's the President's obligation. And he has fallen woefully short of that responsibility. Now, the Trump administration has offered at least 5 different reasons to justify the war, all of which are built on deception and misdirection. First, Donald Trump claimed that the U.S. would attack Iran to protect the demonstrators who were risking their lives to demand democratic change. He even urged them weeks ago to rise up and seize state institutions. But as the regime cracked down brutally, killing tens of thousands of their own citizens, the President did nothing. Even as Donald Trump urged ordinary Iranians to take greater risks, there was never a viable military option for defending unarmed protesters against a brutal police state without sending hundreds of thousands of American troops into Iran. It was an empty pledge to the Iranian people that the current bombing campaign does nothing to undo. Second, Donald Trump and his advisors claim that Iran's unwillingness to negotiate away its nuclear program left no choice but for us to attack. Now, this is the very same person, Mr. Speaker, who told the country last summer that Iran's nuclear program was completely and totally obliterated. The same administration whose Department of Defense has said that the Iranian nuclear program was set back several years, and whose State Department said Iran isn't even enriching uranium today. Mr. Speaker, was the Commander-in-Chief confused in June, or is he confused right now? It was not long ago when America could be sure that we were preventing Iran from pursuing a nuclear weapon. The Iran nuclear agreement successfully did that until Donald Trump recklessly decided to pull the plug because he suffers from Obama derangement syndrome. The president has spent much of the past year trying and failing to restore the same negotiated safeguards he abandoned for partisan political reasons. And because of his failure to negotiate the guardrails that he destroyed, he has now taken us to war. Third, President Trump claims that Iran poses an imminent threat to the United States through its development of intercontinental ballistic missiles that could perhaps someday reach our shores. If Iran is actually on the verge of having that capability, the president should provide the evidence. But no such evidence has been presented to this Congress or to the American people. We can only assume that it does not exist. Fourth, Donald Trump said that he wanted to achieve regime change. Now, Donald Trump is an individual who promised Americans on the campaign trail that launching regime change wars in the Middle East has been one of the most foolish and costly things that the United States has ever done. Those are Donald Trump's words on the campaign trail. Candidate Trump said that if elected, he would never get our country into an endless regime war. President Trump has now done the exact opposite. Regime change wars are among the most expensive things that we can undertake. And yes, Secretary Hegseth, for decades, they have failed to accomplish their objective. Vietnam was a regime change war. Afghanistan was a regime change war. Iraq was a regime change war. And despite the incredible bravery of our heroes and patriots, because of failed policy decisions, they didn't work out. Even if the Iranian regime were to fall, we have no way to control what comes next, which most experts believe would be the Iranian Revolutionary Guard-led government rising up and being just as repressive and antagonistic as the current theocracy, and perhaps even more committed to the acquisition of nuclear weapons. Fifth, and most recently, Donald Trump said, "I had a feeling Iran would attack," as some sort of rationale for going to war. Donald Trump had a feeling that Iran would attack. The United States government has initiated a war, put American lives at risk. 6 patriots have already been killed. Thousands of American citizens are stranded in the Middle East, and he's plunged the entire Middle East into a war and chaos over a feeling. It's outrageous, it's unacceptable, it shocks the conscience. The last few days, 6 service members have died, and the Trump administration has acknowledged that more of our heroes are going to be killed. We have no concrete justification for why we are putting American troops in harm's way and spending billions of dollars on a foreign war while the affordability crisis rages here at home. A crisis Donald Trump said he would fix on day one, but instead, Republican policies have made worse. Taxpayer dollars should be used to drop grocery prices, drop housing costs, and drop health insurance premiums. Instead, Donald Trump is spending billions of taxpayer dollars to drop bombs in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, the president's war is unwise, it's unpopular, unauthorized, unlawful, and unconstitutional. And in the United States, we serve the rule of law, not the rule of man. James Madison once wrote in 1788, "The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny." Our Constitution requires the president get approval from the Congress before launching a war. That has not happened. And that's why this bipartisan resolution, led by Democrats, is on the floor of the House of Representatives today. In their wisdom, the framers believed that they had made it impossible for a president to do what Donald Trump has just done, and that no other president has done before, launched a major war in the Middle East without the approval of Congress. That's what Donald Trump's time in office has been all about. Failure after failure, betrayal after betrayal, disaster after disaster. In his return to the presidency, Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump has left America less prosperous, less safe, and less free. He has hurt us again and again, failed us again and again. And now, by launching this unauthorized war of choice, setting fire to our Constitution. The American people deserve better. And as Democrats, we're committed to continuing to fight to use your taxpayer dollars to lower the high cost of living, to fix our broken healthcare system, and to clean up corruption. And we stand on the floor here today to make sure that those taxpayer dollars are being used in ways that are designed to make life better for the American people, not launching another endless war in the Middle East that is destined to cost more American lives and waste billions, if not trillions, in taxpayer dollars. We are here to stand up for the American people. We are here to stand up for our men and women in uniform. We are here to stand up for the rule of law and the United States Constitution. We will not rest until we end this national nightmare and continue America's march toward a more perfect union. Vote yes on this War Powers Resolution. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard a lot there. I didn't hear any discussion of Article II authority. I heard a lot of reminiscing, but I didn't hear any reminiscing about Libya either. There you go. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Chairman Emeritus of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. McCall.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker, in 1979, the Islamic Revolution began, and a dark veil of terror descended upon the Middle East. Since then, Iran has operated as the nucleus of the world's most dangerous terror network. When the withdrawal from Afghanistan set the world on fire, The regime grew even more emboldened, fanning the flames of chaos and violence beyond its borders. From that moment onward, China, Russia, and Iran have been locked together in an unholy alliance, which seeks to destroy Western values and upend the global balance of power. Iran has played a key role in these malign efforts, arming Russia with lethal drones to massacre Ukrainians and fueling China's military machine through illicit sales of oil. Its terror proxies, Hamas, Houthis, and Hezbollah, have sown terror and instability across the world. This is a regime that values martyrdom over prosperity and chaos over peace. Their legacy of American bloodshed in Beirut and the USS Cole, to harboring terrorists after 9/11, to backing Hamas's unprovoked October 7 attacks that killed 46 Americans. A regime this murderous can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Thanks to President Trump and Operation Epic Fury, the dark shroud that covered the Middle East for nearly 5 decades has now been lifted. And the people of Iran, who have suffered so greatly at the hands of the Ayatollah, finally have a chance for freedom. This is an historic moment, one that could finally put the Middle East on the path to peace. In my judgment, Iran's decision to hit our partners with was a severe miscalculation, turning the Gulf nations against Iran. Meanwhile, the regimes of the so-called allies, Russia and China, have abandoned Iran. Iran is isolated and now an island, and normalization between Israel and the Arab nations, as envisioned in the Abraham Accords, is now at hand. Despite these truths, congressional Democrats are seeking to force President Trump to halt Epic Fury mid-operation, risking the objectives of this critical mission solely for political purposes. Now is not the time to tie the hands of our commander-in-chief, and it's also not the time to hold up DHS funding. Even before Operation Epic Fury, the threat landscape was at an all-time high. President Biden's open border allowed more than 700 Iranian nationals to enter our country, and more than 18,000 known or suspected terrorists. As a former chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, I know all too well sleeper cells can execute foreign-inspired or directed acts of terrorism within our borders. And we have already seen that happen in my hometown of Austin, where 3 people were tragically killed over the weekend at the hands of the terrorists. Operation Epic Fury confronts this threat head-on, severing the tentacles Iran has wrapped around the globe to strangle peace and spread terror. The Ayatollah's reign of terror began with weak leadership from President Carter. It will end with strong leadership from President Trump. This war powers resolution is ill-timed and ill-advised. Congress must stand with the president and our military to finally close, once and for all, this dark chapter of history and pave the way for lasting peace. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman reserves. The
Not yet.
gentleman from New York is recognized.
I didn't reserve yet.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Speaker, I got to say I heard one of the craziest things from my colleague just a couple minutes ago, that if something has been going on for 40 years, it can't be imminent. It can't meet the definition of imminent if it's been going on for 40 years. That's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. If every day I walk out of my house and get my tail kicked by somebody, that is the exact definition of imminent. It will happen tomorrow. It will happen the next day and the next day until you finally step up, grow the spine, and prevent it from happening. One of the most absurd arguments I've ever heard. Now I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, now it is my great honor to yield 2 minutes to a person who is the greatest speaker in the history of the United States Congress, the first woman, the distinguished Speaker Emerita, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding and for his kind words, but more importantly, for his leadership in bringing us together today and his great statement and that of our distinguished leader, Mr. Jeffries, that we heard earlier. I stand here as former leader, but also as one with 30 years of experience in intelligence. And I think this is a very important debate for us to have. There are two debates going on here. One is a debate as to the Constitution of the United States. The other is whether Iran should have a nuclear weapon, which we all agree they should not. But that doesn't mean the Constitution of the United States should be a casualty of that because you want to take a shortcut to the war. I rise in mourning for the brave service members who have given their lives in this conflict. We honor their ultimate sacrifice, and we pray for them, their families, and all who are injured in it so far. I had some veterans, Mr. Speaker, in my office earlier today on two different occasions, and we talked about the fact that having 6 people killed so early at the beginning of a conflict, initiation of hostilities, is unacceptable. What is our plan? What do we have in mind for them? So again, we all agree Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, and to that end, that's why I'm so proud at what President Obama did with this. He was masterful in diplomacy in forging an agreement that verifiably prevented Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. I have this book of statements from our colleagues who told the president we need to see the substance of the agreement, we need to see the validation and proof of it all, we need the communication to the American people. The president respected the Congress and came and gave reasons, and this is for an agreement. And this president won't even come and give us the data for an action of war. So let's be clear, this is not a debate about the merits of the war. That's another debate. It's a debate of the Constitution of the United States. The beauty of the Constitution, central to it, is the separation of power.
I yield the gentlelady another 30 seconds.
Okay. The central of power, Article 1, and in that Article 1 is, very importantly, the power of the Congress to declare war. So, but again, let us be serious about our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution as we protect and defend the people of our country. That is our responsibility. That is what we will do. I urge our colleagues to vote in support of the Constitution, then go on to the debate of whether we should go into Iran or how we go into Iran. And I think that there'll be some mixed views on that, but that's a different subject. I urge our colleagues to honor your oath of office, honor the vision of our founders, honor the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform who've gotten us here today. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields. Does the gentleman reserve?
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3 quick points. Just number 1, it is Article 2 of the Constitution that gives the President the authority to defend us against the imminent threat of Iran. I would say that if the Iran nuclear deal was so masterful, why didn't they bring it before Congress and the Senate, before the Senate? And the final point that I would make is this. Again, last Congress, 354 members of Congress, including 150 Democrats and Speaker Emeritus Pelosi, who just spoke, all voted to say, use all means necessary to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. That was their vote. And I am proud to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Arkansas, Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Mr. Crawford.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the Chairman, my good friend, Mr. Mast, for yielding and for his leadership on highlighting the error of removing the United States Armed Forces from a conflict. It will bring an end to a 47-year engagement. Mr. Speaker, make no mistake about it, the Iranian regime is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and despite extensive diplomatic efforts, the regime refuses to give up its nuclear weapon ambitions, its ballistic, cruise, and anti-ship missile production and proliferation, or its support of terror. As Secretary Rubio said yesterday, quote, Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics. They have an ambition to have nuclear weapons. They intend to develop those nuclear weapons behind a program of missiles and drones and terrorism that the world will not be able to touch them for fear of those things, end quote. When these murderous despots tell us what they want, that they want to eliminate us from existence, which they have said time and time again over the past 47 years, and now in a relatively short time frame, they attempt to sprint to the finish line by significantly hardening their conventional defensive posture, expediting the development of nuclear weapons, and showing their desperation by slaughtering thousands of their own people. It's clear that we have reached the point of no return, a point after which it's too late to respond. We all know that we wouldn't be here today if the president's name wasn't Donald Trump. Democrats have been calling for the U.S. to take action against Iran until Donald Trump did so. Last month, Democrats sponsored H.R. 7380, the Iran Act, chastising the Iranian regime for repeatedly shutting down internet connectivity and impeding the Iranian people from communicating during emergencies and exercising internationally recognized human rights. And earlier this year, the Democrat-sponsored H.R. 5912, the Disrupt Act, would require the executive branch to, quote, develop a whole-of-government strategy to disrupt growing cooperation among the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the People's Republic of Korea, which are the foremost adversaries of the United States, and mitigate the risk posed to the United States. This Democrat bill even states that the partnering of these four U.S. adversaries, quote, reinforces threats posed by each such adversary individually. Seems pretty clear to me that the Democratic rhetoric is argued in favor of cracking down on the brutal Iran regime, of course, until President Trump was the one to initiate the regime's demise. President Trump has a duty to protect Americans and the United States' interests both at home and abroad. The administration engaged in earnest diplomacy to mitigate the Iranian threat. It became crystal clear, however, that the Iranian regime used the diplomatic process to buy itself time to reconstitute its ballistic missile inventories and nuclear weapons program. As the threat neared its apex, a point beyond which mitigation would be impossible, President Trump lived up to his duty as commander-in-chief and took decisive action. On March 2nd, President Trump notified Congress, consistent with the oft-criticized War Powers Resolution of 1973, of military action used to address this threat to the American people and American interests. In other words, the President has clearly acted consistent with precedent and has prosecuted this military action in a transparent and forthcoming manner, holding multiple press conferences, and sending his cabinet officials and operational experts to provide multiple classified briefings on the status of the ongoing conflict to all members of Congress, as well as appropriate committees and their staffs. Mr. Speaker, passing the measure today would do nothing to keep America safe. It would do nothing to strengthen Congress, and all it would do is put America's safety and that of our allies at risk. It would allow Iran to once again rebuild its murderous regime and terrorize the world. Vote no. I thank Chairman Mast for his partnership and his leadership, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields.
Reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Yes, I'm proud to yield 2 minutes and 30 seconds to the esteemed gentlewoman from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the whip of the Democratic caucus, the Honorable Katherine Clark.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from New York for yielding. Donald Trump has taken America to war without authorization, without explanation, without a strategy or an exit plan. 6 brave service members have already given the ultimate sacrifice. Others have been wounded, and Americans are stranded across the region. And what do we hear from our commander-in-chief? He shrugs and says, that's the way it is. And how about that ballroom? The American people do not want their sons and daughters shipped to another war in the Middle East when they don't even know what the mission is. They want a country where their children can do better and reach higher than their parents did, where they don't just survive but can actually get ahead, where a doctor's appointment is not a luxury. And what are they getting instead? Republicans have been raiding their health care, their Social Security, their veterans' benefits, all to enrich the billionaire class. Illegal tariffs jacking up prices, secret police murdering Americans in the street, a corrupt DOJ that covers for pedophiles while denying their victims justice. But today, you can stand with Americans who are entitled to know what the objective of this war is. what the cost will be. They deserve to know the sacrifice will not just fall on working and military families, but will be shared by the wealthy and the powerful. Today, you can join us in telling the President that the Constitution is not just a suggestion, that our country belongs to its people, to the American people, and that the power to declare war belongs to the people's representatives. And that 250 years later, whatever Donald Trump may think, that America still has no kings. I yield back.
Yields. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman.